guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about the murders of Mary Ashford and Barbara Forrest, which have been dubbed the Erdington murders due to the similarities in the case. And at first glance, these murders might seem like the work of one person or maybe a copycat killer, but once you take a look at what the similarities are, it actually gets a little bit crazy. So without further ado, if you're new here, my name is Larkij. I'd love for you to subscribe and hit the like button, as well as turn on your post notifications so you never miss an upload. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into the video. So before we get into the victims themselves, let's point out some of the crazy similarities. The first being that both victims were 20 years old at the time of their murders. Both murders happened on Whit Monday, and Whit Monday is a Christian holiday. I couldn't really find the meaning of it, but it's basically a bank holiday where people have time off from work or school. The most important part to know about this is that Whit Monday is a floating holiday, so it doesn't fall on the same exact day every year. But for both of these murders, Whit Monday fell on May 27th. Another similarity is that both bodies were found in Pipe Hayes Park in Erdington. In both cases, the prime suspect had the name Thornton as their last name, which used to be a common name back in the day, but in present time, it's not very common in England. Both victims had spent their last nights out dancing, and lastly, both victims had made prophetic comments in their last days. Both these cases happened in Erdington in England, and Erdington was a rural village in the 18th and 19th century. It was a town that a lot of people would pass through because it was a midway point between Chester and London. The small village grew to be a suburb of what is now Birmingham, England. So now that we're kind of familiar with where the murders took place, let's jump into the first victim, Mary Ashford. Mary was a 20-year-old young woman with many suitors. On May 26, 1817, she spent her day working and getting ready to go out for the holiday that night. That morning on her walk to work, she stopped by a Mrs. Butler's home, which is where her friend Hannah Cox lived, and she stopped by there to drop off the clothes that she would be wearing for that evening. After dropping off the clothes, she made her way to work. Later that day at 6 in the evening, she headed back to Mrs. Butler's home to get ready for the night with her friend Hannah. Mary and Hannah had plans of going to a dance that was being held at Tyburn House that evening, so after getting ready, they made their way over there. While at the dance, the two ladies enjoyed themselves dancing. They spent most of their time with two young men that they had met that night, Benjamin Carter and Abraham Thornton. So at around midnight, the group of four decided to call it a night, and they started walking home together along the main road, Chester Road. At some point, the group parted ways, and Hannah made her way to Mrs. Butler's home by herself. At this point, I guess Benjamin just tagged along for the walk and decided to head back to the dance, while Mary and Abraham continued their walk to Mary's grandfather's home. At around 4 in the morning, Mary headed back to Hannah's home to change into her work clothes. Hannah reported that Mary seemed to be in a pleasant mood, and after the two chatted for a little bit, Mary started her walk to work. Witnesses reported seeing her walking alone a little bit after 4 in the morning. At 6:30 that morning, a factory worker by the name of George Jackson was on his walk to work when he stumbled upon a bundle of clothes, a hat, and a pair of shoes near a water-filled pit. He followed the belongings and found Mary's lifeless body in a muddy pool. He immediately contacted authorities, who began their investigation. In their investigation, authorities found a man, a woman's footprints in a field nearby. When her body was found, Mary's arms were bruised, so authorities suspected that she might have been raped prior to her death. It was later determined that Mary's cause of death was drowning. The prime suspect was Abraham Thornton, who was arrested by 8 o'clock that morning. In questioning, Abraham admitted to spending time with Mary after the dance, and he admitted to having sex with her, but he insisted that it was consensual. Abraham said that him and Mary spent some time in the field stargazing until about 3 in the morning when he walked her halfway to Hannah's house, and that was the last time that he had seen her. Abraham's trial began on August 8th, and the public was convinced of his guilt. However, due to lack of evidence and 3 witnesses corroborating his story, Abraham was found not guilty. Mary's brother, William Ashford, refused the verdict, and he demanded a new trial. In response, Abraham demanded a trial by battle, which is basically an old law that allowed two parties a fight to their death to prove their innocence. William refused to participate, so Abraham ended up walking away a free man. Although Abraham was free, the public continued to believe that he was guilty, so much so that Abraham eventually fled his home to start a new life in the United States. Mary Ashford's murder haunted the town of Erdington for years as it remained unsolved, even more so in 1974 when Barbara Forrest was murdered and the cases were coincidentally similar. Barbara was also 20 years old and she was a nurse at Pipe Hayes Children's Home at the time of her death. Like Mary, Barbara was murdered on Whit Monday after spending a night out. She spent her last night dancing at several bars with her boyfriend Simon Belcher. They were out until about 1 o'clock that morning when Simon walked Barbara to the Colmore Circus bus stop and they parted ways. Though Barbara was murdered on May 27th, her body was not found until June 4th when it was discovered in a ditch covered by trees. She had been raped and strangled, and her body was found just 500 yards away from her home. To make it even crazier, Barbara's body was found just 300 yards away from where Mary's body had been found a century earlier in Pipe Hayes Park. The prime suspect in Barbara's murder was one of her co-workers by the name of Michael Ian Thornton. Upon investigation, it was found that Michael had provided police with a false alibi and Barbara's blood had been found on his pants. Michael was arrested for Barbara's murder in September of 1974. After 7 days of trial, the judge directed the jury to return a not guilty verdict after hearing that there was no evidence linking Michael to Barbara's murder. They concluded that the evidence was circumstantial and he was acquitted. With no other suspects, Barbara's murder has remained unsolved. As I mentioned earlier, both ladies had made prophetic comments in their last days. Mary had told Hannah Cox's mother that she had bad feelings about the week to come. Similarly, just 10 days prior to her death, Barbara had confided in a co-worker, and I quote, "This is going to be my unlucky month. I just know it. Don't ask me why." After hearing all the similarities in these two cases, you can't help but think it's the work of one person or maybe a copycat killing or something like that. But it makes it creepy to find out that they happened 157 years apart. It kind of gives you goosebumps. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment down below if you have any cases that you would like for me to look into and make a video about. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys in my next video.